So, Jane and John just got a new version of their LMS. And it's interesting, to say the least. The new guest rework added this new version of the LMS with a very clear distinction. Lyrics. And I'm stopping the craft impression because I'm not keeping this up. Welcome to my second attempt at making a serious video. If the thumbnail, title, or even the craft bit I just did not explain what this video is about, this video will be tackling the changes they did to the LMS theme between Jane Doe and John Doe. We will go over a small music analysis of the LMS and a bit of my opinions. So before we begin, let's get over a quick disclaimer. This video fills a very small niche, and you should know a teeny tiny bit of music theory. I, myself, am not a music expert. I'm still studying music, which makes me a student. I'm not trying to say that my opinion should be taken less into account. I actually think anyone can express their opinions, even if they're not an expert. The point I'm trying to highlight is that a lot of the scoring I did for the piece might be wrong. So please forgive me for any mistakes you may see in the score or during the analysis. Hello and welcome to the bass plate. You'll be seeing this place a lot, so get comfy. To understand some ideas inside the music, let's get some context over the relationship between these two. Jane Doe and John Doe were a married couple that worked for Roblox HQs, or the admins, I guess, assigned to test faulty code. On March 18, 2017, John had been in an incident where a parasite made from faulty code overtook him. His easygoing and lack of personal ambitions made him an easy target for the vessel to overtake him. After said incident, John went missing. Maybe he got forsaken at this point, but nothing official has been said. It's just maybe implied. Jane Doe was devastated by the incident. Through her milestones, you can see her grieve more and appear much more depressed, signifying some self-guilt for not finding her husband. I know I'm glossing over a lot of the lore, but sadly, since the origin on how these two got forsaken is very ambiguous, for now we can keep the context that these two were a happily married couple. They both got torn apart after an incident, and eventually they both got forsaken and are now eternally stuck in the hell of the Spectrum's realm. That kinda sounds like another character we already know of. Who cares? Let's get to the music analysis. Since both versions have the same instrumental, we'll start with the first version of the LMS. We hear bells ringing off in the distance while a guitar and violins start off the piece. The guitar is more of a red herring because even though it's our loudest instrument, we can hear the violins doing the actual main melody, which you will be hearing more often. The guitar just keeps the rhythm of the song bouncy and tense with the jumps between notes. The music has just intensified as drums enter, and so does an electric guitar doing the rhythm. This chiptune melody takes some space while the main melody we were just talking about itself is in a 2-bar loop. The chiptune instrument sounds to me like a representation of something digital. Technically, John Doe is corrupted by a parasite made from digital code, which makes sense, I guess. but that's all I can correlate from this weird addition of an instrument. This whole section was a lot, but it contains one of my favorite moments in this theme. Bells are heard in the beginning of this phrase, and you can hear them through the main melody. I'll explain what I think the meaning of the ringing bells mean a little later, but now, just keep the information in your head. So let's go over my favorite part of this theme. This call and response between the violins and the section of tubas. The violins scream this small descending motif, which the tubas almost immediately respond with this harsh, square, robotic, and low-key badass descending sequence. With every repetition the violins take, the tubas lower their last note. This section closes the idea with the tubas doing what kind of feels like a low pedal note, so that the violins can repeat the last notes of our original melody, bringing us back to our tonic. This idea repeats twice, segmenting it as the grand climax of the song, and considering how the average LMS plays out, at around 50 seconds in, the killer had to already giving the survivor some hits, making this section play its tension at a perfect moment. The bells, which at this point we should just call them chimes since normal bells can't make this type of sound, come back and do a weirdly meandering phrase. For me at least, it seems to have no direction up until the end, in which it seems to naturally descend to E flat, our third of our tonic chord. But it surprises you by ending it in an F, which we keep this tension, like if we didn't completely resolve. Before going over why it didn't resolve, we gotta go back to the beginning of this phrase. The electric guitars can be heard more clearly doing the same rhythm, but now it's changing its chords, instead of saying in a C minor. The structure for this last phrase is C minor, A flat, G minor, F minor, and loops back to our C minor. We can see the pattern of starting in our tonic and descending down. Our F minor, being our subdominant, resolves nicely back to C minor. Going back to the last chord, which from what I hear seems to be a C sus4, which is made by C, F, and G. A sus chord is by nature inherently unstable. This doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it holds a lot of tension that wants to resolve. This last chord can have two meanings in the context of this theme. It makes the song unresolved. Considering there's 4 seconds left, it has a lasting effect, like if the winner of the round is yet to be determined. Which only makes sense if Jane Doe is low and is close to being killed, but let's forget semantics. The other meaning I get is hitting in the context of the situation. In the Forsaken lore, these two are being used in a game Spectre has created. It's implied that the survivors are stuck in a sort of time loop in which they fight for their survival against the killers. Jane is forced to eternally die, or maybe survive, and occasionally have to fight against the monstrosity her husband has just become, while John Doe has to kill innocent people, including his wife, as he has no control over his body and is tricked by the Spectre to no longer recognize his wife because of the black blur the Spectre has put in her face. So, what do the bells mean? I can create two different analogies with completely different meanings. First are wedding bells. You may have seen in movies or even weddings, bells being rung. The ringing of bells are done so as to ward off evil spirits and bring luck to the newlywed, and publicly announce the couple's new union to the entire community. While these are superstitions, the ringing of bells is a tradition during weddings. You can make the analogy that Jane and John being married make this analogy very well done, though the meaning of wedding bells feels a bit out of place in this song. So then, what's the second analogy? Have you ever heard of a funeral toll? A funeral toll is a technique of sounding a singular bell very slowly, with a significant gap between strikes. I'm not gonna explain exactly how the technique works, so for now, let's just remember the bells ringing in the beginning and the additional bell notes that could be heard at the end of the theme. I need you to listen carefully for those bells. The beginning bells have a significant pause between each. These also are rung at very offbeat times, which makes the ringing of the bells a much more outputting and weirdly real effect to it. Something outside of the theme, something that's happening at the same time as Jane fights for her survival while John tries his hardest to kill his own wife. The beginning bells do have one thing missing. The tradition of funeral tolls is the ringing of 3 bells, which in this case, let's bring up the bell sounding at the end. Here for the bells below the melody. These last bells ring exactly 3 notes, the same 3 bell hits needed for the traditional funeral toll. I personally think these two ideas of them being wedding bells and funeral tolls work well together. While the funeral toll stands by itself much more better than wedding bells, a combination of these two makes sense for the context of the characters. I love this LMS. It sounds more original compared to other LMS themes because of its tragical tragedy feel. Unlike the typical LMS sound, oh, let me add this sick guitar riff and add these fast drums, you and I relies more on those melodies that pull on your heartstrings and brassy timbre to make this feel like a fight between two characters and not a survivor pleading for mercy. But sadly, not every song is perfect. I personally love Pleat's use of Cool Kids theme, and the use of leitmotifs in songs is generally super cool to me. Which is why I'm kinda heartbroken that this theme doesn't use any motifs from John's Chase theme. This doesn't mean it should sound like Pleat. We already have Pleat, so there's no point in trying to repeat something that's already been done. But that should conclude our first part. But before jumping straight into this new version, I gotta explain something. Since this new version only adds lyrics, I'll be playing the whole new version with an added score so you can follow along with the direction of the voices. Why do I say this? Because I need you, as a viewer, to look at this new version with completely new eyes. Don't hate it for one singular reason. That's not how arguments are made. So enjoy the music and score that probably has some notes that I hallucinated. I'll explain that later. I have to cut it off here since the next lyrics are basically filler. But okay, that may have been a lot to memorize. But thankfully, here on the right, I'll be placing parts of the score that I want to highlight. For now, this segment will go over the likes and dislikes of the new version. Let's start off with the likes. First of all, this new version introduces more ideas. It makes the overall theme a bit more vivid and not that monotone, even though you could make the argument that the new ideas and melodies are repeated a little too often, or that it's just variations from the original version. But it's still new ideas and it adds to the creativity of the song. So let's add that to the list. Talking about new melodic ideas, the lyrics by nature add a bouncy and faster sound which makes the song a little more entertaining and fits the song since the context of the song is for an LMS. Kind of a tense moment, either you survive or you don't, and vice versa for the killer. Whoever did Jane's voice did a phenomenal job. It's super cool and beautiful. There isn't much to add except that those flourishes and little embellishments make your voice sound less monotone and cooler. So great job out there. Going into the lyrics, the use of lyrics kind of explain the lore and gives useful information about the situation of the characters. Jane's beginning lyrics This line directly references Jane's delusional state when John was disappeared and decided to look for him herself. Another example like references to the condition John is at the moment. We know that the corruption that's been consuming his body hasn't killed him. One thing I failed to mention during the lore chapter is that John is still conscious. He has no control over his body, but his mind is still active and can see the atrocities the corruption is forcing him to do. The lyrics also imply that John had been hoping ever since he was forsaken for Jane to find him, only that he can't even communicate to her. John's voice doesn't reach his wife. The lyrics add a much needed context between these two, so as to make their situation much more unique and less of a copy from a certain character. But either way, considering how a lot of the Forsaken lore is basically only found in Wiki, the inclusion of lore inside a theme you can find in the game is so much better. Continuing with the purpose of the added lyrics, we need to look at the song from an outsider's view. As much as it pains me to say this, music generally is categorized by how the public feels it. If a normal person doesn't decide to do an analysis, many of the significant motifs get obscured by how energetic the song may feel. An example of this is Pumped Up Kids, which at this point everyone knows the song is about school shootings. But when it first released, because of its catchy indie pop beats and upbeat tempo, a lot of the people casually danced to it without immediately processing the lyrics. You could say it's a bad example since people ignored the lyrics and focused more on the instrumentals. In our case, the instrumentals can be ignored and looked as a generic LMS theme, if it weren't to have lyrics. But I believe both lyrics and the instrumental can be interpreted incorrectly. Let's look at the famous example of O Fortuna by Orff. A famous song you may recognize as the extremely dramatic and epic film score for a movie, meant to represent the entrance of a powerful god that's about to kill all of humanity. Or maybe you hear it as something else, I don't know. But you probably don't even know the real meaning of the song. O Fortuna comes from a medieval poem of the same name. It's written more as a complaint against Fortuna, the Roman goddess of luck. It talks about how, with a simple turn of her wheel, life can be filled with fortune or filled with absolute misery. Not to mention, the poem is written in Latin, so if someone were to hear this piece and not know anything about Latin, they could very easily mishear the lyrics and give the text a completely different meaning. This example shows how the dramatic tone of a piece and the use of medieval Latin in this text makes it so the average listener correlates it to something that may be completely different from the original meaning. So the addition of lyrics help further cement the idea behind the context and setting of the LMS. The justification of the addition of lyrics makes sense when you take into account that the average Forsaken player will be the one encountering this theme. So it's better to keep it as obvious and clear on what the theme's meaning is supposed to be. This next part should actually be a bit higher in the list since it's more about the score, but who cares? I have to highlight that the harmonies in the new version does with their voices are absolutely beautiful. In the chorus, we actually get this beautiful B diminished chord that before we only got the hint of it, with the natural B in the tubas. The chord also explains why in the next chord we lower our B natural into our B flat. It creates this line cliche where only one part of the chord moves down and creates a nice and simple progression. The added harmonies give a much needed context for some accidentals in the original song. It's a nice way to explain certain ideas without changing the original instrumental. And with that, I can confidently say that we have concluded the list of good things this new version gives us. But now it's time to look at our Let's address the elephant in the room. John's voice sounds like that one Breaking Bad Japanese dub video.
Tell this asshole if he wants to learn how to make my product, he's gotta do it my way! The right way!
First of all, this segment will be a little bit longer, so I'm gonna need a chair. Thank you. Not only John's voice was the deciding factor for me to make this video, it's also the response to the new versions. And seeing the amount of hate being only about John's voice. I understand that, yeah, John's voice sounds extremely forced and kind of exaggerated for no reason. This kind of voicing kind of makes the song feel a little bit more silly and less serious. But what really undermines a whole song is when you try hear a new song and dislike said song only because you dislike John's voice. It's an extremely closed mindset to have whenever you're listening to a new song. Which is why I'm gonna take a different approach to why I dislike John's voice. I'm gonna give an actual opinion instead of doing a stupid comparison on how the voice sounds and being vague about if it's a compliment or if I'm trying to diss it. Knowing a bit more about John's lore, we know that he was quite an easygoing person and laid-back person too. Giving John such a rash and aggressive voice, in my mind, kind of contradicts their personality. But this small opinion raises a much more unique problem. Corrupted John is a monster, and giving him an innocent voice contradicts his design as a killer and as a character. It also doesn't help at all to ground the song as something serious, since only 5 of his skins have actual voice lines, and between those, 2 are joke skins. So what am I getting at then? Choosing a voice for John is an extremely difficult task. We can't just have an in-game voice accurate voice, since we'll be stuck with something like this. Which I hope we can agree sucks. But picking a harsh VA kind of mischaracterizes him too. And giving him a innocent VA makes him even more mischaracterized with his killer design. There's an even bigger rabbit hole if we go into John's even speaking at all. I mean, I just showed you an example of how accurate John VA would sound like. It doesn't make any sense on how we can hear John since he's supposed to be a monster and is incapable of communication. I've seen the argument that goes, oh, it's inside his head, which I guess makes sense. But then we go back into how it doesn't really make sense for such an easygoing person to have a dramatic voice, and how doing a more innocent voice also doesn't fit the character. And oh my god, we're in a loop. You can try make an excuse on how this song actually makes sense. But since we don't have an official statement that explains in detail what is going on in the song, we'll have to agree that John's voice is a spicy subject in the community that might never get resolved until official input is given. I personally don't like how forced John sounds, and I also acknowledge the problem that comes with choosing how John sounds. And if that's just how John sounds canonically, I have to accept that, and yeah, that's just how he sounds, and that's too bad for me. Why am I lagging? What is going on? Dude! Okay, let's just go to the next thing. Go to the next slide. Before going into another big rant with the next things in the list, I'll have to be a bit subjective. I personally think the lyrics for the song are a bit corny. I'm definitely not a songwriter, and I'm very inexperienced when it comes to songwriting. I've done it once and I hated the process, but my opinion can still stand. I can dislike whatever, and vice versa with the things I like. But I'll highlight the biggest offender of the songwriting, which is later in the song, in the end, when the you and I keeps being said over and over and over and over. It gets very boring very quickly. More doesn't mean better. Those ending ad-libs, if it's even the correct term, that I just mentioned are a clear example of what I mean, since they are absolutely unnecessary. Adding stuff for the hell of it won't make it necessarily better. This philosophy can be even applied to the literal essence of the new version. The inclusion of lyrics for no particular reason. This type of weird and unnecessary addition for me always seems like those videos that take a Friday Night Funkin' song and add lyrics. I think this kind of idea from FNF lyric songs bleeds into this new version of You and I, and makes the product feel a little bit cheap since it's already taken an existing song and adding something that isn't really adding anything new to the original. Remember when I said we were going into an even bigger rant with the next things? Well, I wasn't joking. Since we're not done with the complaints that follows the more doesn't mean better idea. I think the huge amount of things happening and effects added in the theme makes the new version a much more difficult piece to go along with and not get lost. There's too many things going at the same time and it lowers the quality of the song to some degree, from my point of view, since I'm sure this type of opinion isn't very popular. The amount of effects in the song also ends up cannibalizing itself by muting some of the chords that the voices are doing, which I've already said in the Things I Like segment, I'm a huge fan of. Another point I want to make is the amount of stuff happening in the new version of the song makes it so... Miss. Another point I want to make is that the amount of stuff happening in the new version of the song makes... Miss. I can do this. Another point I want to make is that the amount of stuff happening in the new version of the song makes it like it's a... Miss. I can't, it just, okay. It makes it... Miss. It uses its effects as a crutch, okay? I'm not trying to diss the composer. I can completely understand that this point may feel like I've crossed the line between criticism and hate. What I mean is that the song, when you do an analysis, you get to see so many cool ideas. The problem is that most of those ideas are incredibly hard to catch. It's bananas! The problem is easily tied to the amount of effects and different instruments playing at the same time. We'll just write this down in the list of things for now. I'm still not letting off the problem with the amount of effects and things layered in the song. Let's talk about those chords I was mentioning that felt like they were getting muted. We have to go all the way back into the things that I liked segment and talk about this chord. This chord that you just heard is extremely beautiful and simple to understand, but the amount of effects happening at the same time made me doubt if there's even an actual chord. I personally felt like I was hallucinating the chords and thinking they only made the voice do eighths for simplicity. This is technically kind of a nitpick, but I think it highlights a very big problem with the overuse of effects and, even more importantly, the overuse of parallel eighths that makes the song a little bit more cowardly when it takes its direction, whenever you take into account that it makes everything sound the same and not very unique or strong by itself when looking at purpose of certain instruments or voices in the theme. I'm still sticking to complaining about the effects, though this one is a bit more subjective. I personally don't like how the effects, especially in the chorus, mutes the originals, the instrumentals in the original version. But this is subjective, since the decision to highlight or make which part of the song louder to make it stand out is the composer's decision. It's not the listener's decision, which is why this argument is a little bit more weak, though it doesn't mean it's completely void. Phew, that was a lot. And now, we are officially done with a list of things of likes and dislikes for the new version of the theme. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, let's calm it down now. I could end the video here, and you could move on with your day after watching a glorified video of a guy complaining about a song from a Roblox game. But let's try go over some fixes we can try do for this new version of the LMS.
Oh boy, I wonder what cool fix he'll recommend. I hope it's something rational and not insanely unnecessary.
Nuke the whole generation. If it were up to me, I would drop an atomic bomb on the whole generation.
Yeah, technically the easiest solution to this problem is to just revert it and remove the new version of the LMS. But it's definitely gonna cause some problems between people that like this new version and people who hate the new version. This is still the easiest solution, but it isn't the most agreeable solution that everyone will like. Another solution I've seen is the implementation of a setting that allows the player to choose between the original version and the new version of the song. But I think it just ignores the problem within the new version of the LMS, and it feels like a very lazy fix, which is why I call this solution the fence-sitting solution. You're not taking into consideration the problems between the original and the new one, and instead you're taking the easy way to please everyone and not have to pick a side. I personally don't think this is the best solution, but I think it's a solution the dev team could implement so as to satisfy all sides. I spent a lot of time talking about the overuse of effects during the things that I don't like, and I think cleaning up some of the voices and letting them ring out will make this song even more dramatic and powerful. You can call me a hypocrite for saying that the amount of things going on at the same time drowns out the instrumental feels stupid, since it's my favorite part. But, like I said in the sixth thing I dislike, the decision to make a certain melody louder than another one is the composer's decision. What I'm getting at is, you can't introduce a use of melodies and then have the voices mute themselves down or just sound the same. because there's too many voices that you can't differentiate one from another, and also not introducing counter melodies or slight variations from the same melody that the voices could do to make themselves sound way more unique. I'll be honest, making music is hard. But fixing a song is even harder considering you're not the original composer. I really do love some of the ideas that I catch in the song, but the problem ends up being that I have no idea if those are coincidences and small hints that I'm relating to something inside my head, which is why I suggest just making another version of the song. Not only is this the last option for multiple reasons, one of them being I really don't know how to improve an already existing song without changing some of the meaning or original intent, and second of them being that this is probably the hardest one to do. If you've been paying attention, my 4 solutions have literally been organized in the easiest to do to the hardest to do. This solution has its problems and benefits without a doubt. The problem, like I said, being that it's the hardest solution. It's a complete rework. The amount of time and resources are just human energy needed to create a completely different version, which should be better than the first version, is definitely an insane amount. Yeah, maybe you could go back to some of the ideas that we have in the new version, but a complete rework implies beginning all the way back from zero. Let's not delve into problems that this solution brings. So I think it's a good time to look at the benefits it brings. One of those being that now that we know what worked and what didn't, we can take off with that momentum and create ideas that fit perfectly with the setting, which also lets us have a little bit more flexibility in our creative process. Maybe we can reharmonize certain bits or even add bigger melodies instead of such a square call and response. We could make it so that the lyrics of John and Jane sound more like if they were addressing each other from an outsider's view, almost like if they were letters that they had wrote each other, instead of this weirdly vague talk that John and Jane provide during the song, in which you really have no idea if they're singing while literally doing an LMS, or maybe this song was created by the Spectre and he just plays that song whenever they reach LMS. It's not Jane and John talking, it's more of a song outside of the game that the Spectre heard and was like,
"Oh, that reminds me of those 2 partners. Let me put this as their LMS for funsies."
I think I've made my point. That being, this solution brings a lot of new ideas that we can push off to create a much better LMS. It's the hardest solution, but the most likely to fix those problems. Before ending this video, I want to be completely clear that these are fully my opinions. You may disagree with them or agree with them, however you like. This video wouldn't have been possible without the help of Pursuer! No, we're stopping the craft bit here. I'm gonna be quite brief because I cannot have this last for that long. You may notice the quality of the mic. Fuck you, that's my reasoning. Anyways, continuing with my last thoughts, I just wanted to say, actually, thank you for watching this video I'm doing this in the middle of editing, just gonna let you know that, and it looks like the whole fucking video, it's gonna be like an hour-long essay, and I didn't mean it to be an hour-long essay. This video was supposed to be 20 minutes. I don't know how it got to this point. Yeah, either way, this is my first attempt at doing an actual real video, so if you're someone that's not from my friend group, well, thank you for watching this video. I mean, it's just thank you. I really don't know what to say, and I'm literally running out of time to do this anyways. So yeah, if you're watching this and you're someone that isn't subscribed, please subscribe, like the video, and just share the video, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Either way, so thankful you've watched to the end, and thank you.
Discord server has been described by multiple people as resembling his own version of Epstein's Island.